Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining us this week on Up in the Air. I'm Nathan Flinchbaugh.
And I'm Casey Herman.
There's so much we have to talk about this week. We have stories on ways to keep pets calm during severe weather, the weather lottery, and Swedish frogs. We also have a feature on forecast uncertainty.
That's right, and as always, Mike will stop by later at the climate wall with the details on the weather we can expect moving forward.
We'll have that and a bunch more in just a bit, but first, here's Update in the Air. A frog in Swedish waters has a neat trick. It speeds up its growth rate when the weather is warmest during breeding season, in a country where warm doesn't last too long for that kind of thing. The animal is the pool frog, an amphibian that needs enough relative warmth to allow its tadpoles to develop as they should. And it's found a way to grow while the Swedish sun is shining, according to a pair of scientists from Sweden's Uppsala University. In a study published in the Journal of Evolutionary Applications, the researchers described the frog's ability to grow faster when the temperature rises. The duo collected frog spawn during their breeding sessions from the Baltic Sea regions in Poland, Latvia, and Sweden. Using two rooms, one set to a low temperature for the species, 19 degrees Celsius, and one for higher temperature, 26 degrees, the scientists tested the growth rates of the spawn by breeding the tadpoles from the three countries. The Uppsala scientists found that tadpoles from all three Swedish, Polish, and Latvian regions grew at the same rate under the lower temperature. But in the higher temperature, the Swedish tadpoles grew faster than the other Central European ones did.
A massive methane leak in Southern California was expected to have lasting impacts, but a new announcement by energy officials suggests prolonged blackouts, as long as 14 days, could also be coming as temperatures soar this summer. State agencies studied the effects of the Aliso Canyon gas storage field's partial shutdown after a natural gas blowout last year that crippled a major energy supply for the region. These officials proposed a plan to prevent power outages that concluded they will reduce but not eliminate the risk of gas shortages this summer that are large enough to cause electricity interruptions for the region's residents and businesses. At the same time, state regulators continue to investigate what caused the blowout that led to the largest known release of methane, a greenhouse gas, in U.S. history. For 4 months, the well leaked uncontrollable, sickening nearby residents and forcing more than 6,000 people from their homes. Aliso Canyon is the largest natural gas storage area in the West and provides fuel for heat in the winter and helps power electric plants in summer when energy demand spikes for cooling. Many nearby residents and some environmentalists want to see the facility shut down.
You can now put your money where your complaints are with the new Australian lottery that lets you complain about the weather and then bet on it. This is a novel idea that plays into Australians' obsession with talking, moaning, and celebrating the various states of weather in the country. You enter with a $25 monthly subscription, which lets you choose 7 numbers between 0 and 9 every week on the day of your choice. The numbers correlate to the number following the decimal point in temperatures for all major cities in Australia at midday each day. So if it's 30.6 degrees Celsius in Sydney, the number you'd want to have your money on is 6. The weather lottery is very different from most other lotteries around the world. It was set up with the purpose to help raise money for charities, which formerly came from state-based lotteries.
The loud roar of passing thunderstorms and other loud noises can spark fear in many animals, causing extreme anxiety not only for pets but also their owners, who must manage this stress. In order to help animals cope with these phobias, pet owners can look for different solutions with the help of their veterinarians. According to the doctor of veterinary medicine, Lauren Colney, there are several techniques to calm an animal during a thunderstorm. Connolly said that techniques such as calming the animal by petting them or simply sitting with them reduce anxiety. Also, allowing a pet to have a safe, quiet place where they can go and be undisturbed can be used. Other methods of reducing anxiety during storms can include conditioning a pet to not fear the sound. You can play recordings of storms and play them at a sound level just below where they will get scared. Lastly, stress relief gear is common. In 2008, with the help of partners and veterinary and trainer endorsements, Phil Blizzard launched his website to sell the Thunder Shirt. The Thunder Shirt helps with thunder and noises, but also can help pets with separation, travel, and even vet visits. Up in the Air will be back in the moment with more.
Welcome back to the show.
We now have a feature on the uncertainty that goes along with forecasting.
Anytime the future is involved, there's going to be uncertainty. For forecasters, the entire job revolves around predicting future weather.
Uncertainty is a fact of life for meteorologists. Our challenge involves learning how to deal with it.
Our audience lives in a deterministic world, but forecasters work with probabilities. To better bridge the gap between the two styles, there are many tools a forecaster can use.
First, a forecaster should invest time and effort into communicating the uncertainty from the outset of the forecast. Do not shy away from explaining why we do not know what we don't know. The process can be very educational to the audience.
What would you suggest to forecasters when trying to communicate uncertainty to their audience?
The key is knowing the audience, knowing what they're interested in. So what does a 40% probability mean for them? Should they change their plans? Should they stick with what they're doing? So understanding what they need to know is crucial to better communicating uncertainty and giving them something that's useful to them.
Another large aspect of uncertainty lies in the way forecasters use certain words to communicate their forecast. It is imperative to understand how the user community interprets select words.
The weather community must make an effort to help reduce unwarranted buildup and unsupported claims of precision in forecasting. If we want to make significant progress in changing how we mislead the audience, forecasters must present the information that is scientifically accurate and lay it all on the table. Avoid overselling and overinterpreting science, and always be clear about what's official and what is simply speculation.
In the example of a large snowstorm in the Northeast in February 2015, the rhetoric about the storm in most forecasts was that it was a storm for the century. In reality, the storm shifted eastward, and so the large amount of snow never occurred. During the entire forecasting window, no mention of uncertainty was made. The forecast was presented as if the information was absolute.
It could be that there was no mention of uncertainty because the forecasters were afraid their audience would not take the storm seriously. However, the fact remains that there must be a balance between presenting information that is actually known and making sure the audience responds appropriately.
Showing clear, graphic warnings that communicate the level of uncertainty can increase the chances for intelligent response to threats.
Always talk about why information is uncertain, not just the fact that it is uncertain. The audience needs to understand why uncertainty is important and how it affects them. Use both qualitative and quantitative forms to communicate uncertainty.
Is it ever plausible that we will be 100% certain in our forecast in the future?
The short answer is no. We'll never be 100%. It's never plausible to be 100%, but we can get pretty close if we get better at observing the weather and as the models improve over time.
Communication of uncertainty is an integral, ongoing part of weather forecasting, not an afterthought. It is another component of improving the forecast.
Going forward, we need to realize that uncertainty is a fundamental characteristic of the weather, and no forecast is complete without a description of the uncertainty. For Up in the Air, I'm Veronica Arnold.
And I'm Zach Warner.
Welcome back to the show.
We've had a pretty snowless winter, and now it's spring, but we got just over an inch of snow over the weekend here in State College. Pretty atypical for early April.
That's right. But hopefully next, Mike at the Climate Wall can move us forward into some spring-like weather.
That's right, Casey and Nathan. And actually, it's looking a fair about better. Over nationwide, we only have about 9.8% of the country is covered in snow. And that's actually the first time since the beginning of the winter that we had less than 10% of the country covered in snow. But our snowpacks down in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado and up into the Tetons in Wyoming and up into Idaho and Montana, the snow is still looking pretty strong. And also down into the Cascades of the Pacific Northwest and into California's Sierra Nevada mountains, the snowpack in the mountains still looking very strong. And also we have some snow over here in the upper Great Lakes and northern Midwest, just a glancing blow from a storm that blew through Canada. And we actually have a tweet from the Green Bay Packers from a couple days ago, and the picture in the frozen tundra and of Lambeau Field and saying it's a spring snow day. Well, it looks like the frozen tundra is still frozen, and they're just going to have to wait it out until the warmer temperatures start coming in. And zooming in on the Northeast now, we still have actually a fair amount of snow up in northern Maine, and as we transverse down into northern New Hampshire and Vermont and northern upstate New York, there's still a fairly strong snowpack in the area. And also into north central Pennsylvania, into the border with New York near Buffalo, there's a little bit of snow, but hopefully as we go on further in this week, actually, we're expected to have a pretty good warm-up. All these little pickets and pockets of snow here, all these little smidges down here in West Virginia should start to melt away as we start getting into next week, because this very large, powerful ridge is going to build into almost the entire country. And as we get into April 22nd, this ridge is going to be very strong, pushing way north into the high plains in the northern Great Lakes and Midwest. And this should actually translate into giving us some much needed warm-up as we transverse into the spring. And our temperature outlook actually agrees with that upper air pattern, because over almost the entire country, we're going to be above normal temperatures from April 19th to April 25th. A little bit more here down in Miami and a little bit of the deep south with Atlanta, down in Atlanta, Georgia, and also South Carolina, a little bit of North Carolina, but most of the eastern United States is going to look actually fairly spring-like for the first time in a while. But the big story here is pushing out west. We have some very, very warm air coming into the area, and that actually starts to get on borderline unseasonably hot, especially in Washington. I was talking to some of my friends that are from Washington, and they're saying that they're getting into the 80s, and that was just last week. So April 19th to April 25th looks like a pretty warm week for this Pacific Northwest, stretching down into the desert Southwest and also into the valleys of California as well, which can also lead into a little bit of dryness. But speaking of precipitation, most of the country, at least east of the Mississippi, from the deep south, Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, upper Midwest, and a little bit up into us up here in the middle Atlantic, slightly above normal precipitation. So as we get into spring, we start to get a little bit more rain. Hopefully it stays as rain and not as snow. Getting into Texas here from, again, still same time period, April 19th to April 25th. Looks like central and southern Texas is going to get some rain, and a couple weeks ago they were actually pretty dry. And also as we get into northern Minnesota and northern North Dakota, we start to get a little bit more precipitation as well. So going west, actually, those warm temperatures are going to correlate with a little bit of drier air. And the most dry air is going to be, again, in Washington and northern Oregon. And looks like they're going to be pretty dry and pretty warm too. And as we get into our drought monitor now, it's not looking, at least overall, not horrible. But again, California is still struggling with the exceptional drought that we've been dealing with for such a long time out there. But as we start to go into the desert Southwest, they're starting to get a little bit below and starting to get into a moderate drought here, and also into the heartland with Kansas and Oklahoma. They're getting a little bit dry, as well as North Dakota, almost the entire state, is a little bit dry. So as we start to warm up, that's the important thing, and hopefully as we start to get into the spring and more into the actual real rainy spring, we start to knock some of these drought numbers down, and hopefully we can start kicking out that drought in California. But that's really all I got at the climate wall. We'll throw it back to Nathan and Casey at the desk.
Thanks, Mike. Unfortunately, that's all we have for this week on Up in the Air. But you're going to want to tune in next week, because unfortunately, it'll be my last episode here on Up in the Air. Also the last episode for Hunter Williams and Casey LaHecca, too.
That's right. It's going to be a sad episode next week, but don't worry, because me and Mike will be back next semester with more Up in the Air. But for now, I'm Casey Herman.
And I'm Nathan Flinchbaugh. We'll see you next time Up in the Air.